Thank you all for giving up your time on a Sunday for learning. I know it's challenging working Monday to Friday and then devoting 2 days to learning as well. So hopefully you get a lot out of this and it's helpful for you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to go back to 30,000 years ago. And the reason I'm going to tell you about myself 30,000 years ago is it's actually very relevant to who I am today and what I've done with my working content. So you guys saw the video before on the DNA testing. I did that 3 years ago. And it kind of changed my life, and I think you guys should all go and do that. You go to 23andMe, which is the site where you can do the DNA testing. What I discovered about myself, this is the funny part of my presentation, is that on my father's side, I'm actually North African. I know you can see the resemblance. On my mother's side, I'm actually from Mongolia. Probably that Genghis Khan guy, because he got around quite a bit. So, never judge a book by its cover. Everyone's got a story to tell. I think that's one of the greatest assets you can have as a content person, is to really have a passion and a curiosity for storytelling. What I found out about my own story 30,000 years ago is that we were hunters, and my ancestors were actually very good with a bow and arrow. And the reason we became Anglo-Saxon is because the Romans took us as slaves to become part of their army to conquer the world. And that was because my ancestors were very good with a bow and arrow. They were very good archers. So I stand here for you today, not simply as an Australian who's been in Australia for 4 generations, but prior to that, 30,000 years ago, I was hunting in North Africa. So really interesting part of my story. As part of my journey, of course, 25 years ago, a bit more recently, I started making intelligent for brands. And at this time, that was quite a novel thing to do. Brand behaviour was very much around interrupting our content through expensive advertising. At that time, we thought it was a great idea. But we started to make TV shows for brands to help them tell their story and help them become the entertainer, help them become the producer. And of course, we now call this content marketing. Over the years, it's been called lots of different things. So in my 25 years of making content for brands, I've gone from making live sporting shows with $1 million budget and a 3-month production exercise, now to having a $10,000 budget to make 30-second piece of food content for a brand. So I've seen a lot of change in the industry, and I think it's important to have some context about the past when you're looking for the future. The reason why this is important is that most of the clients you work with are going to be very conservative. They're going to be very stuck in their ways, the way they've always behaved. And the reason why they don't change their behaviour is because no one really likes to be sticking their head up and to do something different. So one of our biggest challenges as content people is to really hold the hand of our clients and help them evolve and grow their capabilities. What I'm going to share with you today is just some of the things I've learned along the way. There's been a lot of learnings. I'm not going to try and bore you with all of them, but I'll certainly focus on 3 ways of many, which is 3 of the ways that I think that you can be better as a content person. So 3 of my favourite topics are native content hubs, and I think this is a space that is not fully understood yet. I think the content industry is still quite nascent, and I think the power of the native content hub is still yet to have its day. We're also going to talk about multimedia content publishing. Most of what you're covering off in this workshop is about video, but of course there's lots of other types of content that's very important to augment your video production. We're also going to talk about transmedia distribution, which is about how do you make your content work harder, how do you get in front of more touch points with your target audience. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the real estate of native content as a hub. So one of the things I'm really passionate about is making sure that I'm making my clients' money work harder for them. And the way I do that is I take a long-term viewpoint to their investment. If I'm just thinking from campaign to campaign, I'm actually being reckless with how I spend their money. And the reason why I'm being reckless is that I'm not actually building any equity for the client in the content space. My belief is that in the future, the brands will be the publishers, the broadcasters, the producers. And I think the whole ecosystem is being turned on its head. So the opportunity for us now as people providing services for brands in the content space is to take a financial responsibility for the journey we take our clients on. So how do we build equity for them? How do we build a capability for them where in the future they own their own audience, they own their own content capability, they own their own data, and effectively they become a publisher. They become a Red Bull. As Nick said before, Red Bull is arguably more so a media company than a soft drink company. And that's taken 25 years for them to achieve. So I think it's very important to think about when you're spending money producing content for clients, is how you're going to build community around that in a space that the brand owns. Right? I think whilst Facebook, YouTube, all of these free platforms are highly important for engagement and for outreach, I think it's important that the brand also thinks about building its own destination for its content. And the reason why that's important is that you want to get some value out of your investment. So if I'm spending X amount of dollars per year on producing content, and I'm spending money driving audience around that, I should be building my own content hub where I can actually build audience for the long term as a community. So in some of our case studies where we've had great success, we now have over 50% of our audience coming to a content hub we've built for a brand on a weekly basis. And this is return visitors we get for free. Right? It's not because we've spent money with anyone, that is coming back because it's now their favourite site. So that's a really important thing to think about, is to really own the real estate of the proposition. I'm going to talk about some of the things we've done with key design and functionality considerations for building your own content hub. So one of the things we did at Brand New Media is we realised that most of the websites that are built for content have not really been engineered for content marketing. Right? They haven't really been scoped out, and the specifications for them haven't considered what it takes to be a good content marketer with technology. So we've spent a lot of time on this. We now have a white label solution we use, but these are some of the key things we think about. First of all, we look at the user experience and the design. Does the platform allow for easy navigation? We all know that when we go to a site, if the navigation's poor, our bounce rate is very high, right? So when you're thinking about user experience, think of your own experience when you're using platforms. What type of platforms do you like to use? What type of design do they have that actually make them more user-friendly? And all of these features and functionalities about getting more engagement, getting more return visitors. If you like the technology and the content, you're going to go back to that hub on a more regular basis. You also need to think about how the platform can actually surface your content for discoverability. Right? No one likes going back to the same site if it's the same content. You need to be able to bring new content to the surface of the design of the platform itself. You also need to think about how it works on multiple devices. And whilst we know that the smartphone is now the first screen, you still need to consider how people are accessing your content hub on different devices. And also, is it the design attractive? Is it seductive? Is it something that people enjoy using from a design viewpoint? You also need to think about the skin design. When you're designing your platform, you need to have something that's very rich in quality. If you look at some of your favourite sites you visit now, and some of the success you have, say, with people like Netflix. Netflix spends so much time and money just shooting the thumbnails for their UX. Right? In the past, we've just gone, let's grab a photo, stick it on our website. But if you look at the Netflix experience, it's actually a joy to use it. You're actually consuming the content before you watch the video, because they have such beautiful images that tell the story of that piece of content. So next time you're making a video, put as much time into thinking about the shot you're going to take, that's your hero shot, that you're going to use in your platform to tell the story of your content. We also need to think about how we're publishing content in terms of multimedia. One of the things that we do at Brand New Media is to think about how we can drive the client's investment further by not just making lots of video, but augmenting that with other content as well. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in another slide. One of my bugbears is video players, and particularly we're doing a lot of work in emerging markets where you've got fairly poor 3G service. So you really need to make sure you're using a video player that also has great technology. So one of the things to check for is your video has adaptive bitrate technology, which means it's always going to stream regardless of the quality of your connection. Right? There's no use making amazing content. I was talking to Andy before about how do you tell which part of your solution is working, which isn't working. And you certainly know when your video player is buffering that you're not even in the game. So make sure you've got good technology as a video player. Some of the other key aspects to think about is that how do you build a community around your content hub? How do you build a membership and a database? How do you make sure that those return users become advocates for your content hub? How do you use data and for optimization? Again, you're going to find that in this industry, there's a lot of conversation about data at the moment. What I prefer to do is to actually work backwards and actually like to think about the outcomes I'm trying to achieve for that client. So if the outcome is selling something or recruiting a new customer or getting someone to sign up for the Creator Collective program, for example, we actually work backwards from what data do we need to actually tell us that story. So rather than diving in the deep end of looking at all the data available to you, if you do that, you're going to find you're swimming in numbers, and all you're going to do is actually overwhelm yourself with data. So just look at the data that matters. And the data that matters is the data that tells you the story about the outcome you're trying to achieve. So you need to be very outcome driven with how you think about using your platform for data. You also need to give the opportunity for your content to drive a response. One of the first things we do when we're investigating the needs of our clients is to understand the response they're trying to achieve and how we can actually pull it off, not only creatively but technically. So I'm going to show you some of the design work we do in driving response and content. It's also important to think about how you can use your content hub as a hub and spoke distribution model. So a good content hub will enable you to go into your CMS and actually distribute that content on multiple platforms just by ticking a box. Right, if it's designed properly, you can tick the box to send that content to YouTube, to Facebook, to Instagram, to a corporate website, to your partnership with Yahoo, your partnership with SBH. All of your distribution can be managed from the one CMS with a good content hub. So very important to think about how you want to distribute content. And particularly from that distribution hub, you can also be tagging the links to your content. So when you're looking at your data dashboard, you can actually see what sort of engagement and viewership you're getting, not just from people visiting your own URL, but from where people are actually picking up your content from your outreach, from your distribution. So use your content hub as a distribution point as well, not just as a platform for people to come and visit. The other side that we've really enjoyed learning about is, as a good content producer, you also need to actually understand how to publish your content. So we do a lot of work in how do we optimise the look and appeal of our content and how we actually publish it. We talked before the last session about SEO and the importance of that, but it's also important to make sure that you have very strong appeal in how you're displaying your content on your content hub. So this is an example content page for us that's about driving engagement and driving response. So this is a design we've done for a travel business that's trying to get people to book a holiday to a destination. So we've made a really nice piece of video. The video tells you about the destination. It gets you excited about taking a holiday. But what's important about this application is that if I want to learn more about the destination, I've also got an article which I can read. Right, so I get deeper engagement other than just the video, all on the same page. I've also got a quiz, so I can take a quick quiz. How much do I know about Japan? Right? What I'm doing is actually getting my audience to spend more time with the brand. And for us, time spent with brand or engagement is going to be the key drive to actually getting a response. So these are all engagement tools. Having video, having a great article, having a quiz or a competition. We've also got related videos. So if you're interested in traveling to Japan, you can watch the other videos in the series. You can share this content via social media. We also have an embed capability, which means you can actually embed that link and put it on your own site. So we actually have people coming onto our platforms and stealing our content. And if you're in the branded content business, you want people to steal your content. Right? You want them to take it. You want someone to, for example, it might be a corporate website that's trying to promote its staff taking holidays. You want that HR person to come on, take your embed link and put that onto their website to promote your content and your destination. It's all free audience. So make your content stealable if it's funded by a brand. Right? Forget about IP rights other than the talent you've used in the content. You also need to drive conversation. So there's a lot of plugins you can use, such as Gigya on your content hub. which enables you to bring all the social functionality of comments and conversation into your content page, which is also very important. So this is typically how we look at sort of a holistic approach to getting engagement. The key part of this commercially is actually the click to buy. So if you look underneath the video, you've got a click to buy capability. So we've got engagement, we can actually drive the click through to the response straight away. It's really important to think about your outcomes. In this case, the outcome is people booking holidays to Japan. We've got all the content tools we need to get great engagement, but we actually need to get people to click and book the holiday. So that's the key KPI for us. The key metric is how many people click on that banner. So this is what it looks like from a user experience when you actually take it down to the small screen. Is you've got 3 steps for driving the path to purchase. This is a key part of our modelling. The outcome we're trying to get is to get people to book the holiday to Japan. The first thing we do is amplify to our target audience. We understand their behaviour, we understand the media that we need to use to get our content story in front of them. We need to get them onto our content hub. We need to get them consuming and engaging in the content, and we need to get them to click and book. This is the key reason why most of your clients will actually get you to make content for them. It's not for likes, it's not for shares, it's actually for selling stuff. That's primarily what our clients want us to do, right? So you can only drive those sort of outcomes if you take a holistic approach to your ecosystem. One of the other things I wanted to talk to you about is when you're talking to your clients about building a content hub is being able to carefully manage their ego, that their corporate website is not a content hub. It's probably the single biggest challenge we have is our clients say to us, look, we've already got a website, we don't want another one. So when you go and look at their website, what you find is that that website has not been designed as a content marketing website. It doesn't have the same capabilities that you need for good content marketing. So we always encourage our clients to think about building a content hub. It can sit behind their corporate website. But if they're now getting in the business of being a publisher or a broadcaster, they need to think about using technology that's designed to optimise their investment in content marketing. One of the other disbeliefs that clients have is that their corporate brand is elastic enough to be an editorial brand. So if you take the brand of Ford, Ford would say to itself, we're a motor vehicle brand, we've got a lot of trust, a lot of equity, a lot of heritage, a lot of awareness. People will come to us as their first choice for content on motoring. And the reality is that actually isn't true. Right? You'll go to the corporate website to find where the dealers are, to find out features and benefits of the product, but you're not going to go to that corporate website for independent content around motoring. So we do a lot of work with clients to get them to understand this concept of building an editorial masthead. Probably the best story I've got to tell in this space is I did some work for Tesco in the UK about 8 years ago. At this time, Tesco had the biggest library of recipe videos online in the marketplace, yet they were number 3 in usage in visitors. And the reason they were number 3 is because they were marketing as a Tesco.com solution. So the first thing we did is we created a brand called Real Food, powered by Tesco. So from a hierarchy viewpoint, Tesco became kind of the Intel inside. It had the credibility of this is the place you buy your food ingredients from. But we started to build some equity in this editorial concept of Real Food. So we launched a TV series under the Real Food name. We launched a magazine. We launched an in-store concept called Real Food. Within 6 months of launching, Real Food became the #1 food platform in the market. And all we did was repurpose their assets on a different content hub with a different brand story. You'll find that there's very few corporate brands that can transcend and be elastic enough to become an editorial brand. All of your clients will think they can do it. Go and have a look at corporate branded websites that have content. Go and have a look at corporate branded YouTube pages that have their content on it, and look at how many views they have. That's not publishing, right? They're not building an audience because they don't have the kind of editorial integrity you need to be a publisher. So these are some of the relearning we need to do with our clients, because for 30, 50 years or so, our clients have been behaving as advertisers. Now what we want them to do is actually behave as a publisher and as a producer. It's a completely different beast. So in defence of our clients, they've been indoctrinated to think as an advertiser, and now we actually want them to think differently. So our responsibility is to help them in that journey. These are some of the key things that I use to get them to understand. That is that they need to think and act like a publisher, not like a brand, because this is not advertising. They need to be authentic and credible. They need to become a trustworthy source of content. They need to be very consumer-centric. One of my favourite things to do when I'm meeting clients for the first time is they talk about the sort of content that they want on their platform in their content marketing strategy. My first question is, what brought you to that conclusion? What's the strategy? What are the insights behind the decision to make that sort of content? And I can tell you that 8 times out of 10, there is nothing behind that. Right? It's the client or the client's ego has decided they want a certain type of content. And my second question to them is, your opinion doesn't matter. Right? Yes, you're paying me, but in doing my job for you, what I'm telling you is that your opinion is irrelevant. Unless, as the head of Ford, you're going to buy 10 million cars yourself this year, which you're not, because you get a free one, your opinion is irrelevant. Right? So what we need to do is be very customer-centric when we're thinking about the content we produce, how we curate it, how we market it, what sort of editorial hub we publish it under. So my third question I asked the client is that if you could own any media at all, any masthead in the marketplace to promote yourself and promote your product, what would it be? They never say their corporate website, ever, right? They always say, I'd love to have Discovery Channel, or I'd love to have Nat Geo because I'm a travel brand, or I'd love Asia Food Channel because I'm a food brand. So that's when you actually get your clients to start to think about being a publisher and owning a media asset. So the challenge now in the content space is you have this massive land grab for real estate. There's only going to be so many food platforms in Singapore, right? There's only going to be so many travel platforms. The brands that get there the quickest through the skill of people like you guys to build and own and operate their own publishing and media platforms and behave like publishers and media owners, they're the ones that will win. So we need to encourage our clients to be brave, to think big and to think long term about their investment. This is one of the other advantages of having a content hub, is that whilst you can use lots of different tools for getting viewership and engagement, the most valuable engagement you get, in our case, is the 50% plus that come to the hub day in, day out for free. Right, so you've got to have a content hub, you've got to have great content, you have to have a content masthead, you need to think and act like a publisher. You're always going to be using owned, earned and paid tools to get your audience. But what I can tell you is that in the first year of your journey in building your hub, you're going to be spending a lot of coin in this space. Right? And hopefully you're spending it cost effectively. By year 3, this expenditure should be down to like 10% because you've got your own audience already. Right? So take a long-term viewpoint with your clients. Don't just think about campaign to campaign, because that's the behaviour they're used to. They're used to making ads for a campaign, they've got a budget for it, they brief you for it, that's the story. Try and get your clients to think long-term about always being on, having an always-on relationship with your customer. Because if you want the consumer to trust you, if you're Prudential and you want them to trust you as a trusted advisor, I don't want my trusted advisor to come and go from my life on a campaign-by-campaign basis just when they need my money. I want them to be there for me for the information I need day in, day out. Right? And that's the responsibility of the brand when the brand has to behave like a publisher. So making your video work harder. We certainly started out very much as a video-focused business. What we're finding now is that our engagement measurement in terms of time spent with brand and our cost effectiveness is exploding because we're making more than just video. Right? And one of the great things about this is it's a lot cheaper than making video. It's a lot quicker. So I like to call it, would you like fries for that, sir? This is some of the work that our team's done. We've done some amazing work the last 12 months in augmenting video with articles, listicles, infographics, quizzes, polls and forms. And these can all be published alongside your video if you've got the right type of content hub. And all this is doing is just deepening the engagement. If you've got a 2-minute video, people might watch half of that if you've done a good job of your video. They then might go and read the article, they might go and do the quiz. All you're doing is getting your user to spend more time with the brand. The way we monetize our business is by aggregating minutes of time spent with brand. That's the key metric for us besides driving response. So our clients are actually paying us to get the users to spend more time consuming their content. And you've got a much better chance of doing that if you're producing not just video. There's a lot of plugins that you can plug into your hub to help you just plug a quiz in, a competition in. This was a food election we did for FairPrice during the Singaporean election, which worked very well for us. So when you're thinking about your video content idea and you're ideating, also start thinking about what other content can I make whilst I'm there. Right? How can I interview the talent I'm using for a story, for an article? How do I take some really meaningful photos? How do I develop a quiz or a competition? Right? Don't just think about the video itself. We all know video is the most powerful content tool, but you'll find that all these other forms of content are highly beneficial to you for engagement. Okay, the final topic I wanted to talk about, guys, was transmedia distribution, and again, this is a really key part of driving the investment harder and driving the dollar further. The way you need to think about this is to map your audience touchpoints. So this was 25 years ago when I started making content. This is what my world looked like. This is my target audience. And if I was making television or video, I had three choices. I had three commercial TV networks that I could put my programming on. Because I had three choices, because I had $1 million budget, I had 6 months to make 13 half-hour shows, I went to lunch every Friday and never came back to work. I played a lot of golf, I had a social life. This is all pre-digital, right? But this is what the world used to look like. And it was a wonderful place. There was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there was no ADD, 90-second videos. People watched your half-hour show. Whether they liked the show or not was irrelevant. They were stuck on the lounge. You could just program to them. They had 3 channels to watch and life was easy. So they were the glory days of branded content. That's when life was easy. So that was how I started my journey. So you can imagine getting to age 45 and not being able to do this anymore was quite depressing. This is what I was faced with. This is what happened next, right? So the question is, why am I still doing this? This is what's happened to the marketplace. I should be off surfing or fishing somewhere. These numbers are staggering because what we see through digital and social is that people are actually consuming more content. People talk about the death of television not relevant anymore. It's actually not true. People are just watching more content on more screens more times a day. These numbers are staggering. This is for millennials. 18 hours a day of media consumption. When I grew up, I used to watch like an hour of TV a day after school. Right? Lost in Space or The Brady Batch or something cool like that. Google them, they were really good shows. 18 hours a day, I mean, it's scary, right? It's beyond scary. But what this means is when we're mapping our target audience's journey, we have to think about the types of media that we need to use to get to them. Over this course, you're going to hear a lot about social and digital and the importance of that. So I'm not going to talk to you too much about that. And it's fair to say that having social and digital touch points is, of course, extremely important. But I think there's a lot of other relevant touch points in the daily existence of our target audience. So when you're making a content, you're thinking about your distribution plan. Think about what your audience does from breakfast to sundown to going to sleep. The unfortunate thing is that they're spending more time on social media than socialising. I'm not quite sure why it's called social media. It actually should be called anti-social media. But that's another conference for another day. So the majority of our daily media interactions are screen-based. We know that. Over 90% of the content we're consuming is on a screen. But I still think TV, not just because I'm an old-fashioned person, I still think TV is highly relevant, particularly in the bigger markets, Indonesia, Philippines, where you've got still very nascent digital behaviour. Television's still a very important part of it. One of the most pleasing pieces of work we did in the last couple of years is we made a mini-series for digital that got repurposed for Channel 5 and MediaCorp. was a piece of digital work that went back to television, and I'd never thought that would happen. We've done a lot of TV work that then had a digital kind of adjunct to it as a secondary thought. But now we're actually thinking, let's make the hero piece of content the idea, a digital idea, a social idea. But then what would it look like as a television format? Because television is still relevant. What are the consumption occasions for television? Is it because you have some sort of higher ambition in spending time with your partner? Is it because you want to spend family time in front of the TV? But the TV experience is still highly relevant. If you watch a lot of video in the back of an aircraft on a mobile phone, how nice is it when you go to the cinema with a big screen? How nice is it to actually sit on your lounge and watch television? So people are watching more content on more screens, but this doesn't mean that TV is not relevant anymore. So I'd certainly encourage you in your development process to think about television and the opportunity for television. One of the great things about where TV's at is that the rules have changed. We now have broadcasters who are crossing in their news breaks to a Skype conversation, or they're taking a piece of citizen journalism from YouTube and actually broadcasting it as much as it's grainy and it looks crap. Right? This would never have happened 20 years ago. So the opportunity to work with broadcasters as creators of content is alive and well. In my day, my first business model 25 years ago, I had to pay for time slots, for half-hour time slots, and of course you can still do that. But the dance that I had to go through to secure that time slot was about making sure I had the financial investment for my client, making sure I had the right format, making sure I had the research to back up the fact that people were actually going to watch this show. What you'll find now is if you start engaging with commissioners of content and acquisition teams of broadcasters, you'll find that they're very open-minded now to working with the creative community. In the past, they would work with Endemol, Fremantle, Shine, 4 or 5 big multinationals that provided most of their content for them. But you'll find the attitudes change now. They're far more willing to work with you as a content producer. So I'd certainly encourage you when you're ideating is to just drop in and see the broadcaster. Have a chat to them about what sort of content they're looking for, what's working for them, and talk about what sort of commercial models that you can create as a win-win situation. So it might be that your idea you can co-fund. You might fund it from a partner you've got. They might bring in some other advertising partners to co-fund the production, and you might find you've got a really win-win situation. So you do need to think about how you adapt the format for television. Most of digital and social video, I mean, who would have thought that one of the fastest growing video production companies is called 90 Seconds? We used to make opening titles that took 90 seconds. Actually, I think Game of Thrones is a 2-minute opening title. I'm kind of getting a bit sick of it. Certainly think about the television environment because on a mobile phone, we all have ADD. Right? Yet we're going to switch after 5 seconds if that piece of video doesn't seduce us to watch the video. In the television environment, you've got 30 minutes, 60 minutes to tell your story, to entertain people. And I still think there's a real craft in making great content to actually keeping someone interested for half an hour. When you go to the cinema now, you have a look at the new treatment that's coming out of Hollywood. And the new treatment is to actually show the sizzle reel for the film at the start of the film. What they're actually doing to us now is actually showing you what's going to happen in the film without giving away the storyline to actually make you watch the film. You go back and watch a Hollywood film, say, The Poseidon Adventure was made in 1974. It's the best cure for insomnia ever. Right? Yeah, it used to be my favourite film as a kid growing up. I can't watch it now because, like, in the first 60 seconds, there's no sex, no car chases, no one's died. There's nothing interesting in that content from anymore. Just this slow story that drags on and on. But when you're working in a television environment, you do have a different type of consumption occasion. Now, television is a lean-back experience. Right? It's not a lean-forward experience on your mobile. You're on your lounge, you're leaning back, you're actually chilling out, you're unwinding. Right? So you need to adapt your format to suit the screen. We can all spend a lot of money in aggregating audience around our content, or we can actually sit down with publishers and find out what sort of content they're looking for and build meaningful relationships. You know, we have a really strong tie-up with SPH now. we're putting our content at no cost onto their platforms. And this is content that's been funded by a brand, and we're now getting free viewership to extend the reach for that. So think about the ecosystem you create and the types of platforms you'd like to get your content on. And what I'd encourage you to do is actually go and talk to these people. Talk to every digital publisher in the marketplace and find out what they're looking for, and find out how you can get your content onto their platforms to help grow your audience for you. In the past, for example, 25 years ago, I had a very strong alliance with the 9 network. If I was ever seen in the car park of the 10 network, I would have had my knees cut off by Network 9. Right? So we grew up with this mentality as like, I drive a Ford, I watch a particular type of sport, this is my TV network, and I'm very loyal to that. Of course, the gloves are off now, and you can be partners with anyone. So it's a very agnostic ecosystem that we live in. So think about building relationships and partnerships, and have your conversations very early. If you're developing a content idea from a client brief, or even just an idea that you've got yourself because you can see an opportunity for the idea, start the conversation with people in the marketplace and see what they're looking for. And you'll be surprised how loving the community is, because everybody wants content. Everyone's got a different monetization model. Everyone's looking at it from a different angle. So everyone in the business is a potential partner for you. Don't ever see anyone as competition. It's also important to build an outreach network. So you guys are probably very well familiar with AOLs and bloggers and how this has changed the world. So also tap into people in the marketplace that have their own social media audience, and think about how you can leverage them within your content to drive more viewership. And of course, this is a very authentic way of getting viewership, is having great talent that have great audience as well. A lot of people think this is the future of media, and brands certainly need to have a relationship in this space. But what I'll tell you about talent is that they come and they go. Right? Muhammad Ali is no longer the best boxer in the world, unfortunately. Talent comes and goes. It's going to move on the whole time. So from a brand viewpoint, you can't build your brand identity in the content space around 1 or 2 people, because they're going to come and go from the marketplace. But certainly leveraging your content onto other people's platforms is very important. What we try to do is embed a link for this content onto our social media partner platforms, so we can actually measure the performance from our own data dashboard in our CMS. Right? So we host it on our hub. This is just an bespoke distribution platform. It's using influencers to distribute your content. The old email EDM, right? It might feel a little bit old school, but this is still a very powerful tool for us. And we've learned a lot about the design and how to really optimize the performance of an EDM. So for example, with our content hub, we're getting people to become members by signing up for free, giving their email address. We can put out a weekly or a fortnightly EDM with the latest content on the platform. And this is just a great way to remind your customer base that you've got regular content coming in. So think about EDMs, think about your design of your EDM and how you can optimize the performance of it. Of course, we get a lot of spam in our email now, but if you're a trusted advisor as a content provider, you'll find that people will open your EDMs and they're generally interested in what you've got to say. We've also do a lot of work in another touch point, which is Instore TV. So again, when you think about, in this particular case, we're thinking about the food consumer, what are the different touch points where we can impact them during the day? And what I love about supermarkets is they actually have, you know, as much foot traffic, as much audience potential as any other media outlet, including social media in the marketplace. So have a think about what different locations you can actually take your content to. It doesn't just have to be Facebook or YouTube or online. We've also done some experiments with, you guys might remember QR codes. Right? It hasn't been a huge success for us, but I do think that print media is working hard to augment itself with video. And I think we're going to see some really interesting adaptive technology coming out of the print media business in the future for how you can actually augment advertising and written content in a print medium by enhancing that with video. I think it's an interesting space to keep an eye on. But I guess the point of the exercise is just to think about the distribution points, the touch points, and how you can have a different conversation with people.